Hello there, Bearbard here, welcoming you back to another episode of the Bearbard Tales. Today we have another gem of a human being on display for you in this tale from the depths of Reddit's r/RPG horror stories. Today's title is Player Doesn't Understand What No Is, Gets Mad When We Warn Him. With a title like that, you know we have a winner. So let's sit back, relax, roll to seduce, and get this started. Hi all. I never thought I'd have a story bad enough to post here, but here we are, and I'm proven wrong. My apologies if this is a bit long, but there's a lot to unpack building up, and if I don't tell this story, I might just explode. I still try to shave away the irrelevant parts, but we'll see how it turns out. There's so much more about this player, but it's not relevant to TTRPGs, so I'll keep those out. TLDR, player invites himself to the table, makes juvenile, uncomfortable, sexual jokes, doesn't like being told no, calls me names when I warn him, and I end up kicking him out. Content warning here, mentions of sexual assault. Our story starts when I cave in and decide to DM a homebrew campaign for my online gaming group. We're between 16 and 21. Well, there's an outlier in this group, a man in his late 30s that is for some reason hanging out with a bunch of teenagers and barely adults, which in hindsight was a problem in the first place, but since I joined this group at the age of 16 and didn't notice any problems then, only recently did I realize how fucked this guy hanging out with us and making sexual jokes towards the youngest in the group was, and decided to minimize our contact, save for the youngest. To avoid confusion, I'll refer to the youngest as Rogue and the almost middle-aged weirdo as Wizard. The rest of the group is somewhat relevant as they have all been harassed by this man one way or another, so I'll refer to the only woman other than me as Bard, and the two very logical folks as Monk and Sorcerer. Now, since I wanted a safe space for everyone where we can be whoever we want to be, I decided against inviting Wizard to my campaign. But if that worked out, I wouldn't be here telling this story, would I? I talked to every player I want in the table individually. Bard is the only one with prior experience in D&D, and I invited her to help the others by showing them the ropes, and because she's a great role player and genuinely fun to be around. Monk and Sorcerer have been waiting to try TTRPGs since the dawn of time, so they're enthusiastic about joining. Hell, Monk had a character before I even announced I'd be DMing. Now, Rogue also wanted to join. We talk on Discord about how to make a character and what kind of thing he'd like to play as. While we discuss this, the Wizard joins the call and the Rogue immediately invites him to play. Wizard is excited and upset that I didn't ask him first. I can't say anything and cave in, letting him make his self-insert wizard. We make him a sheet and then I tell him to give me a backstory. Doesn't need to be detailed, but you can even give me a bullet point list, I'd be fine with it. I need it 1 week before session 0, which was a whole month after the initial conversation. Red flag 1, he never provides me with a backstory. Ever. During the week of session 0, I write to him every day, and he says he'll give me one. He has everything written in his head, and I tell him I just want a draft. You can write a detailed one later. But no, he tells me he's a perfectionist, so he'll give me the perfect backstory. Day of session 0, and he still doesn't have one. Maybe I should have kicked him out there, but I was a bit spineless and thought this guy was so ingrained in the friend group that everyone would be upset with me. I tell him, okay, just have one before session 1 so I can approve it. The day of session 1 arrives, and I receive a call from him, and he tells me his character's an amnesiac, had a wife, and that he'd be carried to the tavern where the party is. Out cold. That's it. That's all his backstory. That's what took him a month plus a week. The perfect backstory / sarcasm. Session time rolls around. Everyone's excited to get going, so I get them all to turn on their cams, get their snacks ready, and we'll get started. The party meets at a tavern after arriving to the city. Wizard's character arrives, as I was told, and I tell him to describe his character. He describes a very handsome fellow who happened to, well, shit himself. Hilarious. The party has a couple awkward chuckles about this description. A couple comments about his smeller made, and he drags it on. So I insist we move on. And we do. Thankfully. Occasionally, whenever he speaks to an NPC, he mentions his smell, but I and everyone else on the table ignores it. Red flag 2. A few sessions later, we're all hanging out post-session. They're talking about the future plans. A particularly non-binary NPC, relevant I swear, and Wizard asks me if there's a general store. I say yeah, it's on the map. And he says he would go there, buy a medieval equivalent of a plastic bag, and, content warning applies here, f*** her with the bag on. I tell him they wouldn't like that very much, and he just gives a creepy smile. Everyone's awkward after, and I leave the call soon after that. Y'all think this is it, right? I kick him out right there, and we all move on our merry way. nah, my fear of the group falling apart is still there. So I stick to just warning him via PMs about how some of his jokes are uncomfortable and dragging on while I was playing a game with the monk and sorcerer on Discord. He joins the call, immediately starts berating me about how the issues about the table should be handled with the table, and it's unprofessional for me to stick to PMs. Okay, noted. I just didn't want to embarrass you. He doesn't even apologize or say he won't do it again, and up and leaves the call, and us three are just left stunned. Afterwards, I talk to the players individually, and all but the rogue are wildly uncomfortable by this guy's behavior, even before we start playing the game. Rogue just tells me how he fully understands why I'd be uncomfortable, but he himself is not. I overhear from Monk that later on, that Wizard came on call while I was gone and ranted about how he plays his character however he wants. He can shit or piss himself, hit on anyone, and the girl, me, can't do shit about it. Yeah, about that. I pretend nobody told me anything about it. And in the campaign, they try to get information out of a character that's adamant on not letting it out. But Bard's managing with good ideas and even better roles. It's clearly working, but Wizard is barely listening to the game, and he has a plan. He walks out, casts Disguise Self, and turns into a sexy drow belly dancer. And, well, gives the NPC a lap dance and rolls charisma without me telling him to roll for anything. Gets a 14, which makes the NPC turn him down regardless of the result. Logically, one would take the hint and stop. Yeah? Nope. Not this guy. Wizard says his character is disappointed and decides to make him go to the back streets to look for a job as a prostitute. I shut that down real quick, tell him no, and end the session right there. He insists, calls me a killjoy, and that he's just trying to have fun. Whatever. After this, I decided to have an intervention with everyone at the table. Like he says we should, remember? I decided to talk to everyone at the table and tell him how much he's making everyone uncomfortable, and that he either stops with his jokes and uncomfortable comments about NPCs or leaves. His response? But everyone is laughing, and you shouldn't be so offended by jokes. And after some arguing, he goes quiet. In about half an hour, he leaves. A good 4 hours later, at almost midnight, I receive a PM while playing a game with friends. It's a very long message about how me being uncomfortable with his rape jokes is not his fault, and that I'm being the equivalent of an SJW snowflake. How beyond pissed he is at me for telling him no, and that he did nothing to warrant such feelings. After calling me every name in the book and attempting to gaslight me into apologizing to him, he says he had so much fun in the campaign and would be sad for missing out if I wanted him to leave, even though he barely paid attention unless there was a feminine presenting character on screen, and that he had no hard feelings towards me, telling me that he loved me as a sister. In response, I said that it wasn't only me, but most people on the table, and I'm glad there was no hard feelings, but I do and don't want him at the game. In response, I said it wasn't only me at the table, but most people at the table, and that I'm glad he has no hard feelings, but I do. And I don't want him in my game. I tell everyone Wizard will no longer be playing with us, and I get a collective thank God from everybody. And scene. Wow. Dios mío, where do I even start here? First red flag for me is a 30-something-year-old dude hanging out with kids. Now, I'm not saying if you're 30, you can't game with a 20-year-old. But this is a group of kids, 16 to 21, and this guy's in his late 30s. If it just happened to be, you're in like a WoW guild and you play together a bit, that's one thing. But this is a guy who's like pushing his way into plans with these kids. I might be a little bit biased because I'm a 30-something and I coach. I've coached for a long time, so I got kids older than this that I've worked with for forever. So a little bit I might be biased here, but there's something off about that. Then we have the much smaller thing, which is the backstory. It's kind of annoying. When you're a DM, you have so many things you're trying to set up and work on. And if you just ask these guys that, hey, I just need this one thing, give me a week ahead of time, especially if you have a month, there's really no excuse for that, especially with how shallow it was at the end. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making a character with a little backstory. I actually really like that when you especially have like a level 1 character, but don't wait till the last minute before you get there. Then we get to his joke. Look, I get that some people joke like this, all day and they're with their friends and it's fine. That's cool. That's on you. But if you're at a table with other people and you're clearly making everyone else uncomfortable, you got to rethink yourself. If there's 5 people in a group, one person wants to do one thing and then 4 want to do another, you got to go with the 4 people, right? So if you have 4 people uncomfortable with this, just stop. especially when you're talking about kids like this. You don't know their stories. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know any of this stuff. So if these kids are telling you, hey, can we stop this? I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. You just need to stop. There's no real excuse to keep going. And then when this guy is finally asked to leave, we get to the end, this is where it gets gross to me. First, we have him just cussing out and calling all these names. I know, again, I don't know how old this person is. They're somewhere between 16 and 21. There's no excuse for that. Anyway, it doesn't matter what age you are, but especially when you're talking about someone that's potentially half your age, there's really no reason for you to be cussing them out because you're kicking them out of a game. Now here at the end, after he cusses these kids out, then he tries to turn nice and change his perception on them. And here's where it gets gross to me. Now, I wasn't there. I didn't see what was happening. There's a lot of blanks in here, but this is where you look at and think this is where you're potentially getting grooming behavior, especially with that huge age difference. You get this almost mental manipulation he's going through, trying to force these kids like, hey, you're in the wrong. I'm just trying to love, peace, everything out here. So there's a lot missing, and I don't want to start making assumptions, but this makes me uncomfortable when I'm looking at it. And if this was my kids coming to me telling me this happened to them, I wouldn't be happy with this. Couple things I want to add here. First off, I don't get why this stuff happens. You have, 4 people that want to play a game one way, and then 1 person wanting to play another way. There's literally a table somewhere for everybody. Whether you're a hardcore RPer, whether you're a murder hobo, whether you're that guy or that girl, it doesn't matter. There's a table for you. You just have to find that table. That's one of the great parts about this game. The problem is you get these guys like this that come into a game that they're just not set up for. They want to make these games with these people into their games. And it makes no sense to me. Just, it might take a little bit of more work, but just find your group, find your people. That's all you really need to do. Just stop trying to co-opt other people's groups into what you want. There's other people that will play like you. You just have to find them. Last thing I wanted to add is if you get that vibe where you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel safe, you don't feel right around someone at the table, do not hesitate to cut them. Just get them out of there, or you leave, if that's the case. One thing a lot of these horror stories have in common is like, oh, I had the red flag and I should have cut them. Don't should have, just do it. There's gonna be fallout, but it's better to deal with this fallout than the potential of them sticking around. I know this is a gaming group that did a lot of things, but the thing is like D&D is supposed to be fun. Hell, all of gaming, it's supposed to be fun. So make sure when you're finding your groups, find a group that you feel good in, that you feel safe in. And if something is not, change it up. Whether you need to leave, they need to leave, whatever you need to do, make sure that you're having fun. Kind of defeats the purpose if you're worried about everything in your hobby group. I want to thank you guys for making it through the end and for joining me here on this episode of Bear Bar Tales. I know this episode got a little bit heavy, but I hope you still enjoyed listening to it. If you have a story that you want to submit to be read, you can do so either on our Discord or our subreddit, the links of which can be found in the description below. If you had fun listening to this video and you want to hear more, go ahead and hit that like button and give me a follow. We're really trying to grow a cool community here, and I'd love to have you be a part of that. For now, this has been the Bear Bard, and I'll see you guys next time.